Chris Godinez, licensed professional counselor, also host of We Need to Talk on every Sunday at noon, and then I post it up to Facebook. This video is for educational and informational purposes only. The views and opinions stated herein are mine and mine alone. They do not represent the ACA, the APA, or any other therapist for that matter. I'd like to thank my sponsor, BetterHelp. There they are, BetterHelp, 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 BetterHelp.com/Chris Godinez. They're an online therapy company. They are international. They are awesome. They are helping people. It is great. So you go on, you fill out a questionnaire, and they will place you with a licensed professional, master's level or PhD level therapist in your state. If you are outside of the country, they will place you with somebody that can do international. So there that is. Thank you, BetterHelp.com/Chris Godinez. Okay, happy Monday. It's freezing. Oh my God. So I was sitting here thinking to myself going, oh, Tampa was so nice and warm. So, it's it's gonna be 69 today, but it's cold. Anyway, so the question today is about homelessness. So, question: seeing less fortunate people like homeless on the street, they seem to have an aversion to looking at people. Yes, they avoid gaze. Why do they avoid gaze? Is it mental state? Is this a self-esteem shame thing? Notice they avoid eye contact or lay on the street facing away. So in my experience working with the homeless, many of them are mentally ill. Many. And so you either have a mental health issue, bipolar, unmedicated, schizophrenia, unmedicated, depression, anxiety, unmedicated, affecting them. And a lot of times they try to be their own apothecary. They try to be their own drugstore. So they, a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times with the ones that have bipolar and the ones that have schizophrenia, they will try to medicate themselves. So with bipolar, I always knew I was dealing with somebody with unmedicated bipolar, untreated bipolar, when I found out what their drug of choice was, because I worked in the rehab part of it. And if they told me that they were taking, if they were drinking alcohol or any sort of downer, and they were doing some sort of stimulant like, crack or, meth or, something like that, then I was like, okay, I think I know what we're dealing with here. So once we got them on the right medication, oh my gosh, new person, like, oh my gosh, like they could function. And in this country, there is such a huge stigma against mental health issues. It just angers me greatly because it's like, look, pharmaceuticals are freaking expensive. And I don't know any homeless people that A, can have a job if they're unmedicated, and B, can get insurance, because if they're bipolar and they've got, if they've got bipolar with psychotic features, that means they're hearing voices. Okay. And a lot of times the voices are not helpful. A lot of times the voices are paranoid. So they're like, oh no, you can't take that medicine, it's poison. That's what the voices are telling them. The same thing with schizophrenia. So a lot of the homeless that I worked with had schizophrenia, unmedicated, untreated, undiagnosed, whatever. And so once we were like, okay, they're doing this and they're taking this, my guess, let's get them into a doctor. Let's get them into, and we'd get them into the right social service to get them diagnosed, number one, and on the right proper medication, number two. So a lot of them try to medicate themselves with street drugs, and you can't. You just can't. It's not ever going to work. And trying to get some of them to understand that, because again, you're dealing with people who may be developmentally delayed. You're dealing with people who are severely mentally ill, SMI. We often would deal with people that were so detached from reality that we were like, okay, this needs to be an inpatient thing, not just an outpatient, So they don't make eye contact because either there is a mental health issue underlying going on, and being homeless they're treated terribly, and society looks down on them. Oh yeah, real good Christian society there. So, people are like, well, why can't they just work? Okay, I'll tell you why. Have a friend get on one side of you and say nothing but good things, but really loudly, like yelling. Have another friend get on the other side of you and say horrible things, but yelling. and then have somebody in front of you give you instructions to do something. Let's see how well you do. Y'all see where I'm going with that? If you're schizophrenic and you're floridly psychotic and you've got voices literally screaming at you like God on one side, Satan on the other, and somebody's trying to give you an instruction, you're not going to be able to follow it. You're going to be more interested in hearing or listening to what the voices are saying because your survival in your head depends upon it because your brain is messed up. Okay? You can't hold down a job when you've got God and Satan having an argument in your head. Okay? So that's what angers me. And this is why every year homeless people end up getting killed by the police because the police are giving them direct orders. And if they're hearing voices and if they're paranoid, they're not going to follow those orders because either one, they don't hear them, or two, they're convinced their voices are telling them, no, this person's going to do X, Y, and Z to you. You can't follow what they say. And so they don't follow what they say. And then the police officer, who's not trained, by the way, in any sort of, psychological stuff, gets angry and beats them or kills them is the more likely outcome, because as soon as the schizophrenic homeless person feels threatened, they're going to fight back, as would anybody who when they feel threatened. So my answer to that is make sure that there is always a social worker on those calls when you're dealing with somebody who is floridly psychotic. You need somebody to help the police understand, look, they're not being willfully disobeying. This is their brain is telling them not to listen. So anyway, but a lot of times there's such a sense of shame, huge sense of shame. And what population ends up being victimized by psychopaths? Well, that would be the population that is at the fringes of society, which would be sex industry workers that often end up homeless, or the homeless that are mentally ill, or the homeless that are maybe mentally ill and addicted, or they're addicted, no mental health issues, but they're just addicted. Those are the ones that the serial killers pick on. Those are the ones that teenagers think it's fun to throw all their stuff into the canal. The shopping carts, They don't understand. That shopping cart is that, I'm going to get emotional. That shopping cart is that homeless person's house. That is their belongings. It may not mean anything to you. It may look like junk. You know what? That's all they got. That's it. And a lot of them are terrified to go get help because of the paranoia. So there's a huge amount of stigma. There's a huge amount of shame. There's a huge amount of fear. There's a huge amount of, society has rejected them, so they reject society. Can't really blame them. So yeah, that's why they don't make direct eye contact. If somebody is mentally ill, they're not going to make direct eye contact with you. And also you're dealing with a cultural thing. Is the person First Nation? Because if they're First Nation, direct eye contact is disrespectful. So you got to kind of know these things about the different cultures in your state or in your area to understand why somebody is not making direct eye contact. That's another thing, police officers screaming at somebody who is the First Nation and, not understanding that they're not making eye contact out of respect as opposed to disrespect. And of course they immediately assume it's disrespect because don't get me started. So anyway, the point being is they don't make eye contact. It could be cultural, or it could be shame, or it could be the mental health issues. Absolutely. So that's why they do that. And they don't feel good about themselves. They don't. Like anybody else, they want to be loved. They want to be heard. They want to be respected. They want to be seen. They want to be believed. A lot of them weren't believed. A lot of them that came into the homeless shelter, there was a lot of sex workers that had been abused horrifically by their pimps. Nobody believed them. Nobody cared. It's like, why should I care? You're a sex worker. Why should I care? 'Cause they're a human being. How about that? How about nobody deserves to be treated like that? Nobody deserves to be beaten. I mean, like, beaten. Like, oh my God. So when I was working there, and I'll stop after this story, but when I was working there, one of the ladies that was one of the peer support, she is amazing. She was a former sex worker. She was on meth. She was going to die. She was absolutely going to die. This was before I met her. This is This is her story leading up to how she became a peer support. So she was going to die. There was no two ways about it. She, if a good strong wind came along, it would have knocked her right over. She was skin and bones. She was on meth. She was, getting beaten up by her pimp. She was getting harmed. And she finally turned it around and she got help and she trusted the counselors and the peer supports, and she got to the point where she then was healthy enough to become a peer support and turn around and give back to the homeless community. So they're not hopeless. They're not. If they're willing to get help, they're not hopeless. And today she's healthy, she's happy, she's got kids, she's doing great. So, it angers me when people, again, narcissists love to put, the homeless, fringe society, sex worker, like somehow we're better than them. Listen, kids, all of us are a paycheck or two away from homelessness, especially in today's society. So when somebody starts copying that attitude, I know they're not a good person. I do, and I mean that attitude by, they're less than, they're da-da-da-da, that kind of thing. So realize that when you do come across somebody who's homeless, they're not making eye contact because of either mental health issues, the shame, or a cultural issue. And trust me, most of them wish they had a family, wish they had health, wish they had, a lot of them were there because of health issues. They couldn't pay the bills. They went bankrupt. They were living in their car and then they couldn't afford the car. You do what you got to do to survive. So that is why there's a lot of shame. There's a lot of stigma. There's a lot of, they're the population that gets picked on because who's going to miss them? If there's no family to miss them, psychopaths go, nobody's going to miss them. If I take out a few prostitutes, nobody's going to miss them. Green River Killer picked on prostitutes. Several times in Phoenix, we've had homeless people get murdered or missing or, whatever, because the killers think, who's going to miss them? Happened in Sacramento, happened in, it happens all over the country, and it's disturbing. So again, predators go after the vulnerable. They go after somebody who they think they can get away with harming, which is why I think the homeless shelters are so important, because all of us workers there knew who the regulars were. We knew what street corners they slept on. We knew when they were supposed to be in. And if they didn't show up, we would send a van out to go look for them. Where are they? Are they okay? Are they coming in? What's going on? To try to help them, because sometimes they didn't have the mental capacity to help themselves. So they need a little nudge. So, it's a thing. I do miss working with the homeless population. I do admit it. It was dirty. It was dangerous. But dear Lord, it was so satisfying to see people overcome and not just survive, but thrive and figure out who they really are. And oftentimes, bringing it full circle, oftentimes those people had families that were dysfunctional. They had families that turned their back on them. They had families that were toxic. They had narcissists for parents, that they just kind of let the kids raise themselves and didn't care. So sometimes that homeless shelter situation is the first time where they get that there are actually people out there that care. So that's why there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of stigma, and it could be the mental health stuff, or it could be cultural. So, all right, enough of that. So, and here's my recommendation. Do some volunteer work. Soup kitchens, homeless shelters, job opportunity things, Fresh Start Women's Resource Center. I bet you they take volunteers. So it's eye-opening, and it helps you learn compassion. If you had family members that made fun of the homeless, that's a great way to really walk in their shoes and talk with them. They're human beings. Their mental health issues may prevent them from connecting, but that doesn't mean they deserve to be treated or poorly or abused. So anyway, there that is. All right. Okay. Wednesday I will be answering another question, and I'm going to go turn on my heater because I'm freezing. All right. I will talk to you guys later. Bye.